Hello, good morning, welcome. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. It is Tuesday. Or are we already on Wednesday? I don't even know what day I'm on. How depressing for me. I'm glad to have you, though. Damn glad to have you here at damnradio.com/live, if that's how you're listening. And then we're coming to you live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. This is International Flavor. If you feel like calling in, you can do so at 573-746-8020, which would also be entertaining for today. I'm following up on a couple of topics that I've been, beaten up upon, truthfully, in the last couple of weeks. We talked about last Friday on Civic Outlaws some of the efforts that we've been taking, our push back, I should say, against the alcohol, tobacco control folks and their overreach. And we talked a little bit. I shared with you one of my articles that I wrote last Friday. If you want to find those, you can find them, all of them, out either on my LinkedIn page, Samuel Trapp, and just do a quick search. You'll find me, Modern Law Ecosystem and Civic Outlaws. And all those articles will be out there. I have another one that I'm publishing this week that I'm going to share most of it with you today because I think it's important. I shared with you that they're trying to pass a bill that gives liquor license investigator police authority to arrest at any time, and how that folds up against the Fourth Amendment, in my view. And this has been my position for a long time. And, I've been right before, and the judicial branch has struck me down. I'm still right. And I wanted to share a little bit about that, too, because I'm going to repeat that effort this week or very soon as well, about the Missouri Bar and the BS that they have going on. They are not your friends, lawyers. They're not. Their webpage looks better than it used to, and they're trying to I don't know what, show that they're that they might take the interests of lawyers almost as importantly as the protecting the public. They got to protect the public from evildoers like me. And it's BS the way they do it without any authority grant. So some of the things that I've actually been talking about on the ATC side are the exact same issues in the bar. They don't have the authority. It wasn't given to them, not by the legislature, not by the Supreme Court, by nobody. They do not have the authority, and yet they regulate. And nobody says anything. Hell, they're so secure that they don't even answer sunshine requests. And I didn't push it last summer. I wasn't ready. But I wrote the following. Let's see, I got the date. June 30th of 2025 is when I sent this out. And remember, I sent the same thing to the governor's office and the same thing to the Supreme Court itself. The Supreme Court answered, the governor answered, but the Missouri Bar blanked me. Nothing. And not even we're not going to answer. Just whoosh, nothing. So that effort is going to go again this week, but we're going to certified mail it. We're going to ask for some things that are truly wrong, and we're going to dig. Why? Because I like to dig, and I'm an outlaw. And if you want to become a civic warrior, go out to Civic Outlaws and join the fight. These are expensive fights. These are not cheap. And I anticipate government overreach continuing long into the future. We have a government class that believes they run the planet. And apparently they do, because now you can strike Iran if you feel like to. Rubio is now saying that the strikes on Iran were preemptive because we don't want Iran blowing up. Once again, it's evil versus good. That's what they're trying to get you to believe. Don't believe it, because this is not good and evil. That's it. Well, the evil is actually the government and our government, our overreach. Okay. Because we don't want to go to war with Iran, do we? I mean, does anybody out there even know the issues regarding this? They're going to sell you the crap that, Iran's the bad guy. The Ayatollah's the evil man on the planet. Well, not according to 97 million Iranians. And they got stockpiles. I'm telling you, they got big stockpiles of drones and missiles. They can hold out probably longer than we can. Ours are depleted, all sent into Ukraine. So we have stepped into another forever war that was going to be a couple of days, surgical strike. We find out now we're following who? As usual, we're following Israel, right? And so I take this, and this is a much smaller issue, but it's the same damn concept. It's people making decisions for you that they really shouldn't be making. It's people taking power that they really haven't been given. And that's why Civic Outlaws exists. And so we sent out some sunshine requests yesterday, which I hope to also be able to share with you, but I might not get to those until Friday. But I'm going to share with you because we are going to do the Missouri bar part. And I've created an entity with a partner. We have partners, and that entity is called Modern Law Ecosystem. You can find it at modernlawecosystem.com. And it's a sort of a companion with our 501c3 charity, which is Civic Outlaws. And we're having a fundraiser for Civic Outlaws. Details will follow. Because I'm only on the periphery of that. There are several of us in Civic Outlaws. If you'd like to, we're looking for donors, of course. We're looking for board members, of course. And if you have, you want to open the window, raise the blinds, as it were, on these overreach efforts, I think you should join us. And I'd love to speak with you and get you involved. We're already so busy. We're like, it may be calm on the surface, but underneath we're like a duck on the water, and our legs are paddling like crazy, right? If you remember that metaphor I stole from somebody, or metaphoric example, I suppose it would be. But I shared the following letter on June the 30th of 2025, and I did it to the Supreme Court in one version, of Missouri, to the governor's office in another version, and then to the Missouri bar. Okay, and the letter went like this. I'm writing on behalf of International Flavor. I wrote on behalf of my radio program. A nightly investigative broadcast on Dam Radio in Lake Ozark, Missouri. We've launched a public-facing sunshine law campaign demanding records from the Missouri Bar, Missouri Supreme Court, and the Governor's Office related to the highly secretive Judicial Selection Committee, the Fee Dispute Resolution Program, and the Client Security Fund. These entities collectively control who becomes a judge, who gets sanctioned, and who gets silenced, all behind closed doors. We believe these committees operate with no meaningful transparency, no public oversight, and in direct conflict with the public's right to know. We've issued formal sunshine law requests and are preparing litigation if they refuse to comply. This Thursday, we will air a 90-minute opening campaign exposing on International Flavor, exposing the structure, process, and personalities behind Missouri's self-protecting judicial pipeline. We're seeking investigative collaborators, legal experts, journalists, whistleblowers, and any individual impacted by these opaque bar-run systems. Please see the attached press release and that was sent to them. And we attached the following. Missouri Bar Association, subject, Sunshine Request, committee membership and selection records. And it reads as follows. Subject, Sunshine Request, committee membership and selections. This request is submitted in preparation for public expose and ongoing investigative reporting campaign by International Flavor. Legal and political broadcast. At the time it was aired nightly, and so I talked about the nightly program. These records will be used in public-facing reports and potential publication related to transparency and committee appointments within the Missouri legal system. Responses may be read on air or published. Please direct all responses to info@internationalflavor.com and live@damradio.com. We know the process is stacked and secretive, and we want to know how members of these various committees are selected, not pie-in-the-sky statements about how nonpartisan the process is designed to be, but the reality of how it works. For example, we allege that the governor is actually the only potential party in the entire judicial selection process. This is the nonpartisan judicial selection, with any ties to the public having been elected. But that is where any public input into judicial selection ends. There is none. The rest is completely lopsided in favor of shadowy committees appointed by the Missouri Bar. We further believe that the other programs have been used to control certain members of the bar or even destroy professional lives, like mine, using similar shadowy processes, 7-person committees controlled by certain select members of the bar. As a result, we are requesting these records not just to see what exists, but to confirm what does not. We anticipate that many of the records being sought, such as competing candidate lists, internal memos on how members of these committees are chosen, candidate scoring records, etc., may not have been preserved at all, because secrecy is the foundation of how these committees operate. If you deny or ignore the request, you are simply proving the point of the investigation. The public deserves transparency, and silence will be treated as an admission. That's what I do. They haven't answered. It's June. The governor answered. The state Supreme Court answered. So pursuant to Missouri Sunshine Law, RSMO Chapter 610, and consistent with public transparency principles laid out in the Freedom of Information Act, 5 U.S.C. 552, I formally request the following public records: a complete list of all individuals who have served on the Missouri Bar's Fee Dispute Resolution Committee, Client Security Fund Committee, and any judicial appointment commission, committees, or panels influenced or advised by the bar from the year 2000 to the present. For each individual, provide the committee member's full date of service, the appointing authority who appointed him, e.g. bar president, the board, internal committee that appointed such members, any advertising of any such committee vacancy, any records of applications, solicitation of candidates, endorsement, or internal advocacy regarding any such committee vacancy. Number 3, a list of all candidates considered for each committee vacancy, including internal applicants or nominees, and any records of selection, recommendation, or rejection, including emails, meeting minutes, or memoranda. We also requested all policies or written procedures governing how candidates are selected, evaluated, or appointed to these committees. If no such records exist, please confirm this in writing. If any part of this request is denied, cite each specific statutory exemption under RSMO 610 and provide an index of withheld documents. All records are requested in electronic format. Please confirm receipt and provide an estimate production timeline. zero response. They did not answer. Nothing. Okay? They did nothing. And so new requests will be going out this week from Civic Outlaws. The same thing. We'll copy the 6-month ones. I already have the lawsuit drafted. I've just been waiting to hold it and trying to figure out my strategy. But I already know what my strategy is. We're going to have to sue these a-holes, and they can then put up or shut up. They can answer whatever. They can take one of their secretive appointment faces and, the real power that is held within the bar by a select few, and figure out how they're going to respond. And I'm not against that. I just want it to be open. I just want to be able to, figure out something. They're secretive. They probably claim they're not a government entity, but they are government facing. They are regulatory. They're a quasi agency of the state of Missouri, of the Missouri Supreme Court, but they have no oversight by the Missouri Supreme Court. They're their own independent group. In fact, it's the reverse of the Supreme Court. They select the members who will be recommended to the governor to say, these 3 candidates, you have to pick from one of them. So the governor doesn't even get to appoint his own people. And they call this nonpartisan. And they did this because back in the 30s, when they discovered all of this, they were worried that corruption was taking hold in Kansas City and in St. Louis, and large mafioso types, groups were controlling the whole state from either Kansas City or from St. Louis, because the selection all came from there. So what they did instead is they created this nonpartisan group of people, and it's really the same thing as what they now control the whole system instead of St. Louis or now Jefferson City's corrupt group of a-holes, that get to select all of this. There's some very powerful families in Jeff City, but they rule everything from behind the scenes, right? That's what they do. And they knew about it in Florida when I was trying to get my broker's license down there. I had to go and get them. And the funny part is, and this is something I have been against for a long time, is that you can't just go to another state and perhaps get a license. So if some guy decides to attack you, as a lawyer anyway, if some guy decides to destroy you in Missouri, and he does, because that's exactly how it went down. He even told me he was going to do it. He said I'm going to destroy you. That's not his exact. What he said was, I'm going to see that you never practice law in the state of Missouri again. Well, it also means you never practice law anywhere else, because in virtually every state, there's a few different ones, but in virtually every state, you cannot apply for licensure even until you clear up the one state. So one guy who hates you in Missouri can screw you for life in any other place. And so I advocate, and always have advocated because everybody knows it. All the lawyers know it too. If you want to go somewhere else, you got to kiss the ass of the people here just so you can be accepted somewhere else. And if you don't, they're going to send reams of paper about what an evildoer you are. And you don't get a fair shot, and you never do. And it's nonsense, because I haven't been given a fair shot. I'm not saying there wasn't things that I needed to be disciplined for, but I want the records of how these committees, where they get their power, and they won't share it. And of course they won't share it. They have to maintain their power. The light will cause the cockroaches to scurry, just like it is done in the alcohol and tobacco control fight that we've been getting in the middle of. And so, as I told you last Friday on Civic Outlaws, I have another article that I wrote after the events went like this. We wrote article number 3, which is the article I shared with you on Civic Outlaws on Friday, and it went longer than I anticipated. And that article was sent specifically to each member of the committee for public safety, I think it's called. It could be, but whatever it is, it's a law enforcement category, okay? And we sent it out to them and then made a few well-pointed calls to reps in the area. I don't want to, and it's not to rat anybody out, but we want the light open, but I also want to keep who we're working with a little bit quiet, because we are working with people, and people are aware of these, articles that I am sharing, and each one of them is correct. And if anybody wishes to school me on why they are not, I'm perfectly happy to accept your call at 573-746-8020. Well, after the article, the fourth one went out. Well, no, that's not true. After the third one went out, I was sitting in the office and the phone rang, and picked it up, and it was a representative by the name of, let's see if I can remember, Benny Cook. Benny Cook is the rep, and he called the office. We got several calls from several different reps into the office, asking to speak, asking for more details, blah, blah, blah. And because we sent it out to every single one of them. And it's really, the articles are very informative, and I'm kind of, breaking my arm, patting myself on the back, but they're correct. These articles are correct. The analysis in them is correct. What the ATC is doing is correct. My rant for 5 minutes on the Missouri Bar, 10 on the Missouri Bar just now, is correct. These are true issues. These aren't Samuel Trapp's spilt milk, nonsense because I was disciplined in Missouri. I don't mind the discipline. I support the discipline. I think it was extreme, but I support it. I think that every lawyer in the state, well, not every lawyer, government lawyers are untouchable. They aren't even subject to any rules. They got nothing, and nobody can touch them. You can't go into the government and try to get a lawyer for something. Good luck. But the solo practitioner or the small firm guy is disproportionately targeted, because large firms, they're golden too. They have schools of accountants, and they've got all the things that a smaller law firm doesn't have to worry about. And if somebody chooses to target you, they will, like Sam Phillips from the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel did to me. He targeted me specifically. He said, I'm going to take you down. It was because, in my opinion, I wouldn't help him go after Greg Williams, a lawyer at the lake, and I told him where he could put it. And he did not like that. And so he chose to make an example of me. Kiss the ass of the Missouri Bar, or we'll Sam Trapp you. Or we'll Sam Trapp you. Watch out. So that's exactly what they do. And that's what the ATC does. That's what bureaucratic overreach does. And so these articles, when we sent it out, we got a call from a guy named Benny Cook, who's up at the Capitol. He's a state rep. And I forget which district. He's down south somewhere. Texas County, maybe? I don't remember. But he's down there. He's down there in southern Missouri. And he happens to be law enforcement. I looked him up a little bit afterward, and it was kind of a weird call, because it wasn't me that sent my article to everyone, but I wrote the article, and we have nothing to hide. So he called asking for the guy who sent him the letter, and said, I want to talk to him. And I said, well, he's not here right now. He had a somewhere to go, but I'm the guy who wrote the letter. I'd be happy to, I wrote the article. I would be happy to talk to you. And he clearly didn't want to talk to me. Let's put it that way. He was not interested in talking to me. And it was really kind of odd. If you're calling about the article, and he asked a question and said something like, and I'm, paraphrasing, of course. I don't record him or nothing. But when he called up, he said, well, is this about any current legislation on the floor? Is this about anything, that's going on? And he said, I said, Calvin will want. Well, now I've ratted him out, but he's another member of our board here at Civic Outlaws. And I said, that's who sent these letters all out. And he said, I said, well, what should I tell him this is about? And he said, well, I was just wondering if the article was in reference to any particular effort on the floor or anything like that. And he said, but I said, well, I'd be happy to talk to you about that stuff. And, and I wrote the letter. So, he goes, no, I'll wait. And it was really kind of a weird deal. So I took his number, took a message and let him go. Well, immediately we started looking if there was a bill out on the floor of the House, and come to find out there is. And it's a bill sponsored by Benny Cook. And the article's out there, and I asked around about him. Everybody said he's a great guy. He's good, and he's a decent guy. I'm assuming that's the case. I got nothing against him, man. I don't even know him, but apparently he's well thought of and well respected in the House of Representatives, which is great. I'm for that. But he had a bill out there, and this bill is a bill. Let's see, I got the number here because I immediately wrote an article on this bill and shared it like a day later. I was on a tear after reading this bill because of what it did. And it's House Bill 2378. And so I wrote an article. And I'm going to share that article with you. But first, I am going to go take care of some coffee business and give a little bit of a break. But after this wonderful song plays, and this song is only, it's not very long at all, 3 minutes and 57 seconds, I'm going to share it with you. But I really like this type of music, and I like having this on in the background whilst I'm at work. And this one is called Magna Carta, and the song is called Rasha. And I like this type of music, and I hope that you do too. Alrighty then, that was Magna Canta, and the song is Rasha. And I've always liked that sort of music. There's another one that I want to find for Mongolian throat music, but I got to find the specific stuff. You got to be selective when you get that. And but I like Mongolian throat music. So I had to get some readers because I can't read without them, and I turned on the lights in here because it was dark, and so it's even worse. I have horrible eyesight, and well, I don't have horrible eyesight. I have decent eyesight, but I got floaters in my eyes. It's nonsense. Sometimes you think you see a spider somewhere, but it's not. It's your eyeballs being all jacked up like mine. So, at any rate, before our beautiful music break, I was speaking about Benny Cook, the phone call he made, and the resulting afterwards of that, what I did. And so here's what I did. I went and I checked the legislative tracking and went and looked through it and found, what do you know? I found a bill being sponsored by Benny Cook. And I saw it, and it was basically and I didn't pull a copy of it. I meant to, but I didn't have time in my little break to go and print a copy because I thought it would be nice to have a copy. But it's House Bill 2378. And I'm going to share with you an article on House Bill 2378 that I wrote immediately. And I would have sat down a couple hours later, come up with this article. And it's a thought process that I had that I put into motion. And I tell you what, I'm against government creep at all levels, and whether it's done by an agency or a bureaucrat. And remember, I think bureaucrat's a bad word. Administrator's one thing. Bureaucrat, no, quite another. And, you can honor the people who do their jobs, and I do. But the people that love the overreach, love the part that they're building more power, is irritating to me. I don't like it, and I think those people should be exposed. And I just don't like it. But I saw while I was on the break too. Well, no, I'm not going to change topics because that'll make me go somewhere else, and I'm not going to. But the damn TVs are on, and I saw something that reminded me of another topic I want to take. So what I'm going to share with you is an article that I wrote last week, and I shared with you Article 3. So on Friday, I said I was going to try to get to both of them, but they're too long. The articles are too long, and they're hard to paraphrase, but I'm going to try to because I really don't like the reading part. I don't think it's as smooth. I don't think it's as right. I can't see very well anyway, and trying to read things on the air is a frustration of mine. But I'm going to share with you an article that I wrote. It's called HB 2378's Quiet Legislative Creep: The Upgrade of Alcohol Tobacco Control into a Police Force. Okay, what have I been talking about in the last three articles? Where these agents, licensing agents, all they are licensing agents. And I don't mean it's not a bad thing, It's now they're all turning into bureaucrats and seizing power they haven't been given. So I believe there's something behind the scenes to increase that power so that people like me shut up. But I don't think that licensing agents should become policemen. They should have arrest authority because it takes you out of the administrative licensing process and into law enforcement where they all wish they were anyway. And we talked about them identifying themselves as a police department. Nonsense. And they don't have the authority to do that, but they have been for quite a few years. Now they're denying us any reasonable request at Sunshine openness. And I sent some in my own name yesterday, which I'll share with you also. But if I can, and I think I can on my phone. But I better get trucking or I'll never get through this article. Let's see. So let's talk about what happened in House Bill 2378. And basically what it says, it was one line they want to add to 311.630. And the 311.630 is the authority of an investigator. And it tells what they can do and what they, things that they have the right to do. And they can arrest for violations of 311 or 407. The specific statutes that give them power under wrongdoing. They can serve subpoenas and stuff, but it's very, very limited in 311.630. And so Benny Cook wanted to expand that. And I'm interested in how that came out, so I wrote sunshine requests to his office yesterday and to the ATC yesterday, asking for any communication between the two, because I'm interested. And I think it should be, turn on the lights. And if there are no cockroaches, they won't scurry, will they? If you turn on the lights and everything is on the up and up, you got nothing to worry about. And so life is good, right? And Sam's just asking a question that needs to be asked. I'm not, I don't want to take anybody down. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make government better. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to make people or get people to understand that as an American, I have the right to do so. And that I just want answers. And everybody wants answers, but there are specific ways you have to go get these answers. And I'm following those rules. Of course, the Missouri bar, they just don't answer. And they're waiting for me to sue them. And I will, but I'm going to try that avenue one more time before I do sue. And, hopefully with a little more vocal, on this program and everywhere else. Because what I'm doing is correct. And Civic Outlaws exists to attack these type of things, to attack the bureaucrat, to attack laws that come up. And I want information so that I can find out, as a public prosecutor of whatever, whether or not it's, correct, or if it's full of cockroaches. We're going to find out, right? So here's the article. House Bill 2378, quiet legislative creep, the upgrade of alcohol, tobacco control, and police department. In Article 3, I laid out a problem Missouri has been pretending it doesn't have. Alcohol and tobacco control is supposed to be a licensing regulator, yet it has steadily adopted the posture and practice of a police unit. Badges, undercover tactics, secret investigations, and police-style reporting, while still enjoying the political cover of "we're just administrators." Now, House Bill 2378 turns that problem from cultural drift into a legislative choice. If an agency already talks and walks like a police unit inside a licensing framework, the next move is predictable. Expand authority, statutory authority, in a way that sounds reasonable, especially if you bury it inside some kind of emergency language. And that's how a licensing bureau becomes a police force in practice. One amendment at a time, until one day everybody shrugs and says, well, we've always done it that way. This article is pretty blunt on purpose. It is not a personal attack, but it's a demand for accountability. If someone wants to upgrade a regulator into a broad police actor, they should be able to defend that choice in the daylight with facts, limits, and oversight, not with vague language and a wink. The history box: how Missouri got post-licensed and regulator with guns. 1934, Missouri established the post-prohibition era liquor control system. In 1934 is the first version, I suppose you'd call it, of alcohol tobacco control. 1974, liquor control was reorganized under and into the Department of Public Safety. So they're subject to the Department of Public Safety. That's 74. 50 years, 52 years, whatever. In 1988, Missouri established Peace Officer Standards and Training, post-commission. This is how officers get trained. And in 1995, Missouri moved liquor control agents into the post world, making post-certification for agents at the discretion of the head of ATC. Which I think that is a horrible mistake right there, because you've taken them out of administration, even there, and turned them arguably into law enforcement and requiring post-certification. These are police officers by training. And so they want to be police officers, but they're limited in an administrative arm of the government, which is where they are. So in the early 2000s, the Division of Liquor Control, whatever it was called, became Alcohol and Tobacco Control, and the statutory framework in Chapter 311 tied peace officer ATC status to holding a valid peace officer license under Missouri's Chapter 590, which is the post-certification thing, with the supervisor of ATC selecting or designating which employees are to be police officers or peace officers or require post-certification. Now, they have basically said all of them need to be. They've put them, but that's not what the statute reads. The statute says select or certain or discretionary according to the discretion of the ATC. Well, the discretion is, of course, we want all of them to be post-certified. And when they get there, they all want to be police officers. They don't want to be licensing agents. They want to be undercover cops. They want to wear their SWAT stuff. You know, this is what they really want to do. And so we turn them into a police department. Anyway, the article continues. This matters because it proves one simple point. Post-licensed regulatory agent isn't some unavoidable relic from the 30s, which kind of I thought it was when I started researching. It's like, well, you know, back then there's mafia, there's all this stuff that you're changing in Missouri, in Kansas City, in St. Louis, you're changing judicial structure so that, you know, the mafia doesn't run everything, you know, from one city or the other. And that's how the ATC ended up with these weapons stuff. But that's not true. The weapons just keeps growing over time, right? They all carry weapons. Why is a licensing regulator carrying a weapon? I mean, that's not threatening, is it? No, no, no. Anyway, modern policy choices should come with modern oversight. What the law says today and why the police posture isn't imaginary. Missouri's current statute declares the ATC supervisor and whatever employees the supervisor selects as peace officers with the full power and authority to make arrests and search and seizures only. Arrest, search, and seizures only for violation of Missouri liquor laws, Chapter 311, and certain tobacco laws, Section 40 or Chapter 407, 924 to 934. The statute also requires those designated officers to hold a valid peace officer license under 590. That only matters. That designates the lane of what they are saying. It's the legislators saying, you are not general police, you are not specialized enforcement actors tied to a specific law enforcement mission. The same statute requires credentials and a special badge for those peace officers and makes their name a matter of public record. That is not the language of a mere licensing clerk. It's the language of an armed, credentialed enforcement unit. So when people say, why are they acting like police? The answer is because the statute already built police posture into the licensing agency. The question is whether Missouri should expand that posture into a broader police authority. Frankly, I think it should be taken away, and they ought to be doing only licensing issues. But we'll continue. The article has several pages, and I want to make sure to get through them all. House Bill 2378 adds a new trigger that blows a hole in the lane line. It authorizes, this is what Benny Cook is trying to do. It authorizes ATC officers to make arrests and perform search and seizure when exigent circumstances exist, presenting an immediate threat of bodily harm. The bill adds similar authority for state fire marshals. Why are fire marshals going to be police officers and armed and arresting people? Now, I'm much more for that if you're inspecting an arson or something like that and you find something out. I'm still against it. I don't like it. I think if you got a police issue, call in a police department. The fire marshal doesn't have any regulation of police stuff either, just like ATC does not. And they're an administrative. And it's an important distinction, which we're going to get to and explain to you. So even the public summaries of the bill describe these ATC employees already as police officers. That wording alone should make the lawmakers pause before voting for this bill. Unless you are comfortable with an agency becoming a police unit by statute instead of only in practice like it was before. They've taken all these authorities and now through a back door they're trying to actually cover it and put it into a legislative document. So the bill will be sold as common sense. Of course, a post-certified officer should be able to act as an officer in an emergency. Fine, emergencies exist. The question is not whether someone can act. The question is who acts, under what limits, with what oversight, and with what remedies when that power is abused. That isn't put there. All it says is exigent circumstances. That's not a measuring stick. It's a permission slip. It's elastic. It expands when pressure is applied, and once it's in the statute, it will be used because statutes are written for use. Why I'm skeptical about the timing of this document or of this amendment, and why lawmakers should be too. I'm not curious about the timing of this bill. I am skeptical, not because I claim to know the sponsor's motive, but because the timing is too convenient to ignore. For months, Missouri's public conversation has been moving in the opposite directions. Agencies do not get to expand their own authority by interpreting statutes into new powers. The courts are not supposed to rubber stamp agency creativity as though regulators themselves are lawmakers. Missouri went even further than most states. And I'm talking about after Loper-Bright overturned the Chevron doctrine. Its administrative review statute now expressly tells courts not to defer to agency interpretation and to decide any remaining doubt in favor of limiting agency power and maximizing individual liberty. At the federal level, the same tide has been running. The U.S. Supreme Court decision in Loper-Bright rejected Chevron-style judicial deference and reaffirmed that judges, not agencies, say what the law means. And Missouri statute 536.140 and the federal trend point in the same direction. Less agency self-rule, more judicial control. So against that backdrop, a bill that shifts the power from statutory limits to officer discretion, exigent circumstances, doesn't read like a coincidence, at least to me. It reads like adaptation. I'm not claiming that I know who asked for this, but I want to find out why, thus the Sunshine Law request that went out yesterday. I am saying the timing raises an obvious question. What problem is this bill really trying to solve, and for whose benefit? Sure isn't the benefit of the license holder. So from judges interpreting statutes to officers declaring emergencies. That's what this bill will do. Post-amendment to RSMO 536.140, which was effective August 28 to 2025, Missouri's administrative law framework is supposed to keep judges in the driver's seat on what law means. The whole point of judicial review is to prevent agencies from being investigator, prosecutor, judge, and jury over the scope of their own power. There's got to be some kind of oversight, and there isn't. There's none. But a bill like this changes that battlefield entirely. Instead of an agency having to justify its interpretation of a statute in court, the bill hands the officer a discretionary trigger and turns legal meaning into a factual claim by the officer. I felt it was an emergency. So if he thought it's an emergency, he can do whatever he wants. If this bill passes, it will be because the legislator intends to provide a licensing regulator with police enforcement discretion. Once the statute is rewritten that way, the court is no longer reviewing agency interpretation so much as it is reviewing the officer's discretion. Was it within his discretion to act? That is a dramatic shift about who controls the outcome, especially because emergency policing is the kind of discretion courts routinely hesitate to second guess after the fact. I wasn't there. If it appeared like an emergency to him, well, it was within his discretion, and therefore you don't get to sue him because it's a discretionary matter, right? So he can go arrest. He can go arrest in the examples I gave, a speeder, someone who is speeding, if he goes in and claims some emergency, you can arrest him, put him in jail. And then what? I don't know who he reports to, but this is how you turn a lane-limited regulator into a roaming police actor without ever having to admit that you did so. And I really question why this is. What bothers me the most is how conveniently this bill changes who gets to decide. that question. We've been insisting that agencies don't get to expand their own power by interpretation and that courts are supposed to enforce those limits. Then this appears and effectively turns the question into, did the officer say it was an emergency or not? That is not oversight. That's outsourcing legal meaning to an on-scene discretion call with no oversight of any kind. Today, the lane is pretty clear. Authority is tied to a specific statute and specific regulatory purpose: alcohol, tobacco. This bill adds a broad, subjective permission slip to operate outside that line whenever the officer says the right words. If you can reframe an encounter as exigent, you can always reach back in your pocket and grab the police power. And the old licensing only lane limit stops being any sort of limit at all. And why is this important? Immunity. Why this bill is an accountability vacuum waiting to happen. And legislators need to understand this. And you know, it sounds great on its face. Oh, gee, these officers, if an emergency exists, they got to arrest somebody. They're post-certified anyway. Well, I wonder why in the hell they're post-certified. They don't need to be to regulate a license. They don't need to carry a weapon. They don't need to go undercover. I mean, this is nonsense. And this is the accountability vacuum waiting to happen. If you want to understand what House Bill 2378 will do in real life, stop thinking like a legislator reading a bill and start thinking like a citizen calling a lawyer after the damage is already done. At the federal level, something called qualified immunity heavily protects discretionary, on-the-spot judgment calls unless a right was clearly established in a very specific way. At the Missouri level, official immunity shields discretionary acts unless you can prove something like bad faith or malice. Threat assessment, emergency decision, and on-scene arrests are textbook discretionary. So House Bill 2378 doesn't just expand authority, it expands authority inside a legal environment that already tends to forgive a reasonable officer on the scene, perception, and punishes citizens for not being able to disprove those things. When a statute itself authorizes action based on immediate threat, it supplies the exact vocabulary that later becomes a defense. I acted reasonably, legislature told me I could, and I thought it might be an emergency or dangerous. What is an emergency or dangerous while you're investigating a liquor license or you're verifying whether someone has their license up? A licensing. And why don't we do it for any other business? I mean, geez, if a doctor, why aren't medical doctors under armed threat? It's only bars. It's only people that have a liquor license. Why is that? Makes no sense. You can call the police if you think there's something wrong. Why in the world do you need to be able to arrest? Well, it's because they want to get out of this. Well, we can't arrest because it's only 311. But if you give it to them like Benny Cook wanted to do, of all cases, they can arrest on anything. But that's a huge problem as it goes further. In practice, this bill takes decision-making power out of the courts and hands it to the officer on the scene. So later lawsuits become less about whether the agency extended its statutory lane and more about whether the officer's asserted perception was reasonable. That's a very low accountability standard, and it's exactly how discretionary power becomes durable power. Now let's talk about the Fourth Amendment and the end run around this, because this is huge. This is a big deal. The article that I shared with you on Friday told why, and I'll paraphrase some of that, but I really want to make sure we get through this article today. So there's another problem that should alarm anyone who worries about Fourth Amendment and takes it seriously. On virtually every occasion, a licensing agent enters a licensing premise lawfully for regulatory reasons. Check a posted license, verify age verification practice, observe compliance in public areas, review required records. That administrative access is not the same thing as probable cause for a criminal action. But if you combine administrative access with a broad emergency arrest, search, and seizure hook, like this bill is trying to do, you get an end run around normal police investigation warrant culture. They're above that. They're suddenly above something's going on, you need a warrant, to I don't need a warrant. All I got to do is claim it's an emergency while I'm in there. Under this new proposed model, the officer would already be legally present in the establishment under a defined regulatory mission, but the bill supplies a fast pivot into police action based on any claimed exigency or emergency, real or imaginary. In real life, that's a warrant avoidance mechanism. You don't have to satisfy normal criminal procedure if you can recharacterize that situation as an immediate threat or an emergency or an exigent circumstance and act first. Let's be clear. House Bill 2378 doesn't repeal the Fourth Amendment. Courts can still suppress evidence, but it sure as hell is an end run around if he's already there legally, isn't it? So some of the examples I shared with you last week where the officer went in as a spy, left his ID outside, he went into that investigating a crime. He should have had a warrant in that example. If he's going in on the somebody, because he even said it in his report, somebody reported X. He didn't bother to get a warrant. He knew he didn't need to. He could go in and do it, but he couldn't arrest anybody if he found anything because he didn't have that power. He would have had to come out, tell a real cop what was going on, and invite that cop in to check out what he did. But even the investigation is a breach of the Fourth Amendment. Right? That's how constitutional guardrails get eroded in practice, not by abolishing rights on paper, but by designing a system that makes rights expensive to enforce and very easy for the officer to bypass. So retribution is real for license holders even before this bill. Let's add the human reality that doesn't show up in statutory text. License holders are already intimidated. Many will not speak publicly. Remember me telling about the officer who told the license holder, that lady is showing pubic hair coming out the side of her bathing suit. You need to remove her or it's a licensing violation. That's BS. What in the world was he doing looking at the crotch of a woman anyway? But that guy doesn't necessarily want to come forward. He said he would if it became, a huge issue. But they're already intimidated. These guys already hold their license in their hand anyway. And they can shut them down, as they've done in several examples, cost them hundreds of $1,000s, huge reputation things, and they're allowed to shut them down and take them out. These people are afraid to speak, afraid to not. This isn't a collegial review of a license holder. License holders are intimidated. They won't come on a program and express concern. On the record, they will not criticize the regulator or his or her actions. They're afraid of retribution in the form of extra inspections, selective enforcement, administrative hassle, and the ultimate threat, loss of the liquor license, which is for most of them their entire business. That fear alone should make legislators cautious about expanding coercive power in this space. When a regulator controls your livelihood, Sam Phillips, and my livelihood as a lawyer, not just in Missouri, but everywhere in the country, voluntary cooperation is already not voluntary, and silence is not proof that everything is fine. Silence is often self-defense. You're not going to say anything because you don't want the consequences. If I had everything to do again from 12 years ago now, Jesus, I would be licking Sam Phillips' ass from here to, I don't know, wherever, whatever vacation spot you want to go to. And, in an effort to keep the license, but I was doing what I thought was right. And by the way, it uncovered a bunch of crap that isn't, but nobody will listen to it. So you gotta build Civic Outlaws in order to get that done. So retribution is very real for a license holder. And, HB 2378 doesn't land in a neutral environment. It lands in an environment where the regulated community already believes that speaking up will make them a target. Expanding arrest, search, and seizure discretion in that environment is gasoline, not governance. 3 scenarios I'm going to give you that show how this amendment would play out in reality, from the mild to the ugly. If supporters want to defend House Bill 2378, they should be willing to discuss real-world scenarios, not just sanitized hypotheticals about emergency and heroism. Number 1, a compliance visit, lewdness, and a pivot to exigency. An ATC agent enters a venue. Here's an example. This is how you learn in law school. They give you examples and then you talk about them. And our legislators should have all gone to law school, in my view, or at least through a class that gives them critical thinking skills like this. Because law school is generally Socratic. You know, there are different answers in the law. There are different arguments to be made. And what you need to do is learn how to make an argument based on the facts as a lawyer. And either side of the argument, you could read a set of facts, and the law school professor would go, "All right, Trapp, give the point of view from a license holder." All right, or that could be, "Mr. Trapp, give it on the point of view of the agent." Okay, so that's why I'm reading these. This is Socratic method for you. An ATC agent enters a venue for a routine compliance check. Check of the license is posted, age verification, required signage. During the visit, the agent sees what the agent believes to be lewd, like the lady with pubic hair showing out the side of her outfit, or a server's costume that shows too much boob in his independent view, or anything that he decides is lewd. Say a server's costume slips and they see a bit of a butt cheek, or a patron's swimsuit shows pubic hair. But by itself, that's not an immediate bodily harm, but it could be an exigent circumstances, and crowds are unpredictable. Let's say the agent claimed that the room is getting heated, that the license holder refused to remove the pubic hair lady, and voices rise. Somebody shoves a chair. The agent suddenly feels threatened or in emergency or an exigent circumstance, and now, under House Bill 2378, the agent has a statutory trigger to escalate into arrest, search, and seizure authority because an immediate threat exists. And now he gets criminal inspections, criminal rights attached, where they are not present now. Okay? What happens next in real life? The agent detains people. The agent orders staff into back rooms. The agent seizes cameras or phones from people present to preserve the evidence. The agent he hides liquor bottles in the back of his truck and logs them as evidence down at the station house. The agent demands names, records, IDs. The owner, who hasn't committed a violent act, gets cuffed or detained as the responsible party because the agent says the scene is unstable. And in the end, even if criminal charges go nowhere, the administrative consequence is devastating. And if somebody sues, the case collapses as a reasonable officer on the scene, and the qualified or official immunity argument that I brought up before. You get into these immunity fights, and usually the patron or the person making the complaint against the officer loses. Scenario 2, a bar fight, and the regulator plus guy comes in and squeezes the situation. A fight breaks out. 2 patrons, then 5, then 10. This is the scenario supporters will use because it's emotionally persuasive. Somebody should be arrested. Somebody should intervene. But here's the question. Do you want the intervention to be performed by a licensing regulator or a policeman? Or is there somebody who holds a license in his hands? Under House Bill 2378, the ATC officer can treat the scene as exigent, make arrest, search and seize, and in the very next breath, pivot to a regulatory enforcement against the business owner, citations, accusations of disorder, threats to the license, compliance failure that become a bargaining chip against the owner of the establishment or the license holder. This is not how limited government is supposed to work. We separate policing from licensing precisely because combining them creates coercion. When the same actor can arrest you and regulate your livelihood, due process becomes something you beg for, not something you receive. It's gone. Scenario 3, a serious allegation. Now the ugly scenario described by the assistant AG in the hearing in Cole County on December 3rd. A patron reports a sexual assault in a restroom or a back area, a rape. A real emergency exists. Immediate response matters. Under House Bill 2378, the ATC officer can claim exigency and escalate into arrest, search, and seizures. Fine. Except now the officer is both the regulatory gatekeeper and the police actor operating from administrative lawful presence and then expanding into a deeper investigation based on his claimed emergency. The officer locks down the premises. He searches areas that would normally trigger warrants. The officer seizes devices, footage, records, and names. And here's the kicker. The business owner may not be guilty of the crime, but the owner is still treated as a suspect, detained, interrogated, punished administratively. The encounter becomes the full government takeover of the premises on the spot because the statute empowers it. And the officer said the magic words, exigent circumstances. Supporters will say, but that is an emergency. Critics will say, like I do, yes, that's exactly why real police officers should be called and take control, because real police would have established criminal procedure, evidence protocol, accountability mechanisms. A licensing agency should not be upgraded into a general emergency police force by statutory shortcuts. Undercover work, when the agency becomes its own investigator, enforcer, and judge of exigency, like the guy who we have the police report on what he did. That should be thrown out by any court if anybody did anything, but only if somebody's charged with a crime. But they don't do that. They go in, they act like police officers, they go undercover, they take criminal sorts of actions, all without a warrant. And they then use the possibility of them going and filing a criminal charge against a license holder, which is an administrative function, and he doesn't want to lose his license, so he will bend over and kiss the rear end of this investigator all day long so he doesn't lose his life, his livelihood. That's a big deal. So undercover work is a horror story in fact, they ought to take that away and take the guy who's done it in a licensing scenario and fire him. That's what I think. Supporters of House Bill 2378 would say, this just lets them act when somebody might get hurt. But that's not how it will function on the ground, as the three examples I gave you already says. ATC agents already have reason and method to enter, observe, and conduct compliance activity. In the real world, they can include undercover-style observation to detect a licensing violation. The problem isn't that observation. The problem is what happens when observation turns into policing with no normal criminal guardrail. So this new bill risks creating a closed loop. The agency authorizes the entry because it's a regulation. The agency decides what it saw because it's investigative. The same agent decides that the situation is exigent because that's under his discretion. The same agent acts with arrest, search, and seizure power because the new statute says so, and the agency then uses the encounter to pressure licensing outcomes because the regulator says so, or the statute says so in this regulatory license. It regulates the license. That loop is the exact opposite of any checks and balances. If you want to see why this matters, ask a simple question. Where is the neutral referee in the loop? The answer is only the officer's discretion, reviewed later under deferential reasonableness, wrapped in immunity. That is not a system designed for maximizing individual liberty as required under RSMO, the new version 536.140. It is a system designed for administrative victory. That's what it is. House Bill 2378 is sponsored by Representative Benny Cook. His biography matters because it tells you how he likely sees the world. He maintained a commission with Texas County Sheriff's Department dating back to 2005, reporting roughly 19 years of law enforcement, has served as a 911 board member and county emergency management director. He has a criminal justice administration degree. He is not naive about emergency response. That background makes the bill understandable, but it also makes it more dangerous. A law enforcement mindset naturally leans toward let the officer on the scene act first. In true policing context, that can save lives. In a regulatory licensing context, that can become mission creep and coercion against a license holder. So here is the fair question for the sponsor, Benny Cook, and that he should answer in public. Who asked for this bill? What incidents drove this bill? What licensing gap exists that local law enforcement couldn't cover? Why can't an agent call the police? I mean, he can stay there, secure the scene even while the police are called. And in practice, they can do that anyway. That nothing would change. Call the police. Police will be there, especially if requested by another post-certified dude, right? What licensing gap exists, really? Why wasn't a solution a mandatory call-out and handoff protocol to the real police instead of expanding arrest, search, and seizure language for a licensing agency? Could it be to avoid the Fourth Amendment? We wonder. And why does the bill contain search and seizure at all instead of a narrowly authorized limited scene security action until the real police arrive? If the answers are good to those questions, maybe we can amend this bill into something narrow that's accountable. If the answers are evasive or, worse, don't show up at all, public suspicion about timing and motive will only grow because the structure of the bill itself invites that suspicion. And in conclusion, a free state does not build regulator police plus units. House Bill 2378 is a quiet upgrade. It takes a licensing regulatory agency already staffed, unnecessarily in my view, with post-licensed peace officers and adds a broad emergency-based justification to arrest, search, and seize. A power trigger defined by the officer on the scene and protected by immunity doctrine after the fact. This is not a minor tweak. It's a shift into who gets to decide. It takes it away from courts interpreting a statute and gives the officer the power to declare emergencies whenever he feels like it. Away from warrants and toward exceptions. Away from limited lanes and toward discretionary power of the officer on the scene. And it lands in an environment where license holders already fear retaliation for speaking up. If Missouri wants licensing enforced, let licensing be enforced. If emergencies handled, call the police. And if Missouri wants to turn regulators into police, then it should say so openly and impose police-grade oversight. Anything else is government creep, anything less is a backdoor entry, and anything less is the quiet growth of the police state. And that ends my article. And I'm glad I made it through the whole thing. If you would like a copy of that, you can go out to civicoutlaws.com. I believe it is out there. And I think it's important. I really do. I think turning the alcohol tobacco control into a police force is a huge mistake. I'd like to see somebody propose a bill in the opposite direction. Say what I say. Why in the world does why I already say this enough about regular police. Why in the world are they so militarized? Why in the world is everybody running around in SWAT gear? If you need a SWAT team, call the SWAT team. Everybody doesn't have to be a SWAT member. Now, I understand and fully support several things with respect to police departments. I understand body armor, and I think they should wear it. That's what I think. I think it should be issued to them. But I don't think they should... Some of the crap that they put in there, I don't think they should have militarized vehicles. I don't think so. I don't think everybody should be a SWAT member. I really don't. I'd like to see a police officer be a police officer, especially at the community level. You should have to call in the big dogs if the big dogs are in. But I would leave wearing body armor to the discretion of the policeman, whether he would wear it or not, and just curious to see how many wouldn't. I think it's a safety concern that most of them does. They don't know what they're going to run up against every day. I support that. That doesn't mean you militarize them. I don't like that. I don't think people like that in general. And I sure as hell don't like it when when all you are is a regulator. I want to know how many times a regulator of a liquor license has been shot at going to investigate the license. There's already a method for them to arrest under the auspices of 311, Chapter 311 for alcohol, Chapter 407 for tobacco, they can arrest for violations of those laws. But where do they go with the evidence that they collect? The local police. They should call somebody on site. Frankly, I don't think they should have it anyway. I don't think they should be post-certified even. I think that we need to go the opposite direction. If you're just or make every license investigator for every license of every kind an armed post-certified guy inspecting. Why in the world is a liquor license post-certified? Why? You want to save money, legislature? You got your appropriations committee coming up. You want to save it? Take away post-certification. That's what you ought to do. You ought to do the reverse. And that there is no necessity for an ATC officer to be post-certified. I'd love to hear that argument on the floor of the House. That's what I would like to see. And instead of Benny Cook trying to expand it, and probably, he probably remembers a circumstance or something that occurred. But, my suspicion is that that's not the case. My suspicion is that the timing of this is way off. My suspicion is that there was communication between the two. And so yesterday, because I'm a suspicious a-hole, I sent Benny Cook a sunshine law request. And I've invited people on the show. You can come on in the morning and chat. It doesn't bother me. And tell me I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be proven wrong. Okay? That would be just fine by me. I was wrong once or twice before, and I would love to be told that I'm wrong here. Or explain to me why I'm wrong. And so I sent out 2 sunshine requests, one to Kristen Templeton, the head of ATC, yesterday. Now, the ATC's been giving us, I believe, the runaround on some of the things that we have requested, sending us $300,000 bills and crap like that, and saying it'll take 44.3 years to respond. I already think they're in ridiculous land. And the latest one was something we got back a week ago, which says they can't search these documents, and it might contain somebody's tax ID number, and so they'd have to take it off. Okay, but I looked at it. It's not it's the only tax ID number is a state number for their sales tax number, their sales tax ID. So they have to have the sales tax ID put in there. And so the sales tax ID, wouldn't that be public record anyway? That's the way I think it is. See, if people have it, I think they have to tell you what their tax ID is. Anybody can request it. I'm a charitable C3, 501c3. If somebody asks for my status, I got to give it up. And any license holder would have to give up their state license number anyway, and probably their state tax number, their tax ID number in the state, which isn't your Social Security number. And so those documents, I believe, could be given to us, and they wouldn't take 53 weeks and $8,000 or whatever the amount was. So I'm going to share with you, because I'm running out of time, Civic Outlaws' request to Kristen Templeton, the head of DPS. I'm sorry, the head of ATC. She reports to the head of DPS, Department of Public Safety. Kristen Templeton, Missouri Division of Alcohol Tobacco Control. Civic Outlaws Transparency Outreach and Missouri Sunshine Law Requests, December 3 to 2005 to the President. And Ms. Templeton, I'm reaching out in a cooperative spirit. Civic Outlaws is a Missouri-based 501c3 public charity focused on transparency and public education, helping citizens understand how policy decisions take shape by relying on the public record. My goal here is straightforward: to make sure the record is complete and accurate. If there's an efficient way for your office to handle this request, I'm happy to work with you on logistics. And if you'd prefer, I'm also open to a brief call after production, just to ensure we're interpreting what's produced correctly. To keep everything clear, this letter is a new request under Missouri Sunshine Law, RSMO Chapter 610. I'm keeping it intentionally narrow. Missouri Sunshine Law request. Time period I'm looking for: records created or received on or after December 3rd, 2025. That's the date of this hearing in Cole County in front of Judge Stumpy. Custodians are limited to Kristen H. Templeton and any direct administrative support staff who communicate externally on your behalf, if any. On what I want are the legislative recipients. They're also limited, any senders. I want to know whether there's been any Representative Benny Cook or his legislative staff, communications between them. Members and staff, counsel for the Missouri House Committee on Crime and Public Safety, including committee or staff or counsel, and any House staff counsel directly involved in drafting, revising, or negotiating bill language or amendments related to House Bill 3154, because there's another one out there, and I'm writing an article on that, and or House Bill 2378. The bill and topic limitation. We want to talk about communications that concern either House Bill 3154 or House Bill 2378, or any other bill amendment that discusses, references, incorporates, or is substantively related to those bills, limited to communications about any of the following subjects as they connect to those bills. Background screening requirements, including ownership interests, use of criminal history information in licensing, any expansion of ATC authority, or licensing enforcement discretion tied to those bills. Records requested, what I specifically want. Emails, messages used for ATC business like text, iMessage, WhatsApp, Signal, Team, Slack, or similar. Draft language, red lines, bills, drafts, amendments, one-page papers, talking points, summaries, issue briefs, or proposed edits exchanged with legislative personnel. Calendar invitations or meeting requests reflecting meetings or calls about the above bill topic included in any attachment if maintained. Search guidance. Now, as minimal by design. You may limit search to the terms, because they can search these emails and stuff like that, two terms HB 3154, HB 2378. If ATC communications use shorthand or alternate labels for those bills, please include those records as well. If no records are located, if your search does not locate responsive records, please confirm that in writing and briefly describe the scope of the search conducted, custodians, date range, and general location search such as email and stored documents. Redaction withholding. If any portion is withheld or redacted, like the license, your state tax license number, please produce the remainder and identify the statutory basis for redaction or withholding. Frankly, I don't think there is one for a tax ID, but I haven't looked yet. I haven't checked out any case law. Delivery. Please provide records electronically to Samuel T. at civicoutlaws.com, email or download link. If records are electronic, please produce electronically, native format where feasible, or a searchable PDF. Fees. Before incurring costs, please provide a written cost estimate and use the lowest cost method. Rolling production is appreciated if feasible. Thank you for your time and help in keeping the public record complete and accurate. Please confirm receipt and estimated production date. Samuel Trapp, Director of Operations, Civic Outlaws Incorporated, our charity 501c3. I wanted to share that stuff with you today because it's not like we're not engaging. I hope we're engaging sufficiently professionally, because I have some very heated topics sometime. This has affected me dramatically, this type of activity in state overreach, but that just because I'm not licensed doesn't mean that I'm wrong. I'm right. I have been right the whole time. And that speech needs to go along, and I do plan and intend to send my sunshine request out to the Missouri Bar again, attach the first one, and attach, say, hey, if you claim you don't have to answer, and hell, I'll have somebody go serve them with that to make sure they get it and it goes to the right person. I want to guarantee that, because they could just be blocking. I served it by email and by mail. I mailed a copy of it, but I didn't do certified back in June 30th. I know it got to them because it didn't get bounced back, nothing like that. And it got to the governor's office. It got to the Supreme Court, and they both responded. Missouri Bar, not so. And basically, they're either just saying, that Trapp, look what we did to him. And, we're going to continue just ignoring him. Why? Because he's he's an instigator. He's agitators. He's an agitator. And maybe I am. Maybe that's what I was chosen for in my lot in life, is to be an agitator. I'm an agitator. And but I tell you what, I want to get to the bottom of this. I think what they did to me is BS. I think they were very selective in how they did it. Sam Phillips targeted me directly. And I believe that license holders under this new House bill, Benny Cook, would be just as devastating to the lives and livelihood of people who depend on an alcohol license, on a license to sell, retail, or buy the drink. They depend on that for their very livelihoods and lives. And if you're taking that away, it shouldn't be by circumventing the Fourth Amendment, by doing an end run around procedure, because you get away with it and you always have. Civic Outlaws exists to attack such overreach. And I'm telling you, I'm committed. This is not going. To end with me just quietly petering out somewhere. I'm not going to do it, and I will go as far as needs to go. I invite anyone who has a contrary opinion to contact me. Samuel T. at internationalflavor.com, Samuel T. civicoutlaws.com, Samuel T. modernlawecosystem.com. And any one of those three, and I can be reached. I will talk to you, and I would love to talk to you, especially if you're having a different point of view. I'd like you to convince me. But Benny Cook, but come on in. I am not anti-police. Not remotely. I have strong opinions on a lot of it on the police department. I have strong opinions about, immunity. And that's a BS prospect for most of the part, that people you don't get to take out bad actors that are bad actors because of qualified and official immunity. A lot of times you can't even sue them, because the question isn't about what damages were created and done by an individual actor. It's about whether or not they had the discretion to do it. Lives get destroyed that way, by one person having discretion to destroy a life and livelihood, like Sam Phillips at the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel. Hell, he revels in it. And I believe there are a lot of licensing people who do. That's the end of International Flavor today. I'm very glad you joined us. Please join me every morning from 7:30 to 9 a.m. at damradio.com/live. You can listen to all past shows at internationalflavor.com, and I hope you do. We're trying to open the door, open the window, open the eyes of people, and I hope you keep supporting us and join in the queries to people who dictate what you will do in life. Have a very good day, a great Mid-Missouri day.